All right, so you got my curiosity here. You didn't go to college for this. You definitely are self-taught. You have over a decade of experience in proven results. What even got you into this field to begin with? Like, why do you even care about other people's money?
Yes. So this was, again, 100% completely selfish to start. When I've been in the investment realm for 15 years now. What got me into the investment realm was not necessarily by choice. It was pretty much by default. I was dealing with severe dizziness issues at that point, to the point where I couldn't go to college even if I wanted to. I was stuck in my house for 23 hours of the day where I couldn't do hardly anything because I was so dizzy that I couldn't. I would get nauseous and sometimes fall, be off balance, stuff like that. And I would feel so terrible I couldn't do anything. That changed. My wife came home one day and she said she was pregnant with our first daughter. And I remember the day I was sitting there playing my PlayStation 3. FIFA soccer on my PlayStation 3. She came out of the bathroom and said, "Babe, I'm pregnant." And we're like, okay. And then I went back to playing, registered, and I was like, what?
Quite a moment.
Yeah. And then we got all excited, and then immediately I got scared because of my dizziness and lack of college degree, I couldn't even work. I couldn't do it. When I say I couldn't do anything, I literally couldn't do anything. I had no skills, no life skills, no job skills whatsoever. But in that moment, I realized that I needed to do something so I could make money at some point to make money for my family. The only things I thought of that I could do with my limitations at that point, I'm glad you like that, Lovely, was become a politician. As you know, and as many people who are probably going to watch this know, I'm the world's worst liar. So that was out.
No.
I thought to become a writer, which I do now, but I didn't then.
I know you.
Hello. I didn't do then because in high school, and I have to preface this, every time I say this story, people get upset, but I have to preface this. I had a very close relationship with this teacher. Me and her son grew up playing sports together. She was kind of like a second mom to me. With that preface, my senior year of high school, Yulia has arrived. Yes, she has. With that preface, at my senior year of high school, we had to, in our English class, we had to do a major report. And I got a D+, I think, on that. And I showed it to my teacher, or my friend's mom, who was a teacher at the school. And she was like, "I hope you would never want to become a writer because it's terrible." And it was. It was. I got a on it. I almost failed my senior year of high school. And I was a straight A and B student without really much trying. And I almost failed my senior year of high school because that's how bad it was. So that was out. I couldn't do that. Third thing was to become an investor. Why did I think about becoming an investor? We had this class called consumerism in my senior year of high school as well. It was one semester we had U.S. government. The other semester we had consumerism. It was kind of a hybrid class. They taught you how to write checks, get a credit card, what credit cards are for. Very, very basic financial literacy. But one of the things they taught in that class was about the stock market and investing and compound interest. That was my knowledge of investing at that point. And I didn't do anything with that for years until that day where I thought of 3 things that I needed to do or that I could do. That was the only option. So by default, I chose investing. That was the only 3 things I could think of. And by default, because that was the only one that I was even somewhat interested in. And because I wasn't terrible at it, I chose investing. So I didn't choose it because I thought I was gonna be great at it. I didn't choose it because I knew nothing about it. I didn't choose it even because I was interested in it. I chose it because essentially I had to choose something to pursue to make money for my family at some point.
Well, in addition to that, so I find that interesting. The way that things played out for you is fascinating to me. You get this seed planted in high school, a teacher who gave you the truth, actually. I don't feel like she was being brutal. I feel like she was telling you the truth. And then later you don't do much with it until this key moment. But your parents went through something as well. I think that tied all of this in for you. What happened with them? You know, care to share that story? I know if you're not comfortable with it, we move on, but I think.
No, I'm 100% comfortable with it.
Okay.
I think I actually told this one to Deb and Eulalie, who I think are still watching.
Yeah.
So I went on that journey, and I think this was probably 2 or 3 years after I started learning about investing. And at this point, I still knew essentially nothing. I was learning from scratch. There were no courses at that point. I couldn't go to college. I had no mentors. So I didn't know much still at that point, but I knew enough that my parents showed me their retirement statement. And I immediately became furious because I saw immediately that they were getting ripped off. The reason they showed me the statement in the first place was because they couldn't figure out why they were losing money. They were literally losing money as the stock market was going straight up. I was like, that makes sense. Let me check out your retirement statement. And as soon as I saw their statement, I became furious. And again, for those of you who know me, I never become furious.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot for something to make me very angry. What I saw was that their retirement advisor, to put it nicely, I'm trying to be nice here, he was charging them a 6% fee off the top, which is absurd.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Almost professional hedge fund people, like big hedge funds with billions of dollars, at most up front they'll charge like 2.5%.
Wow. So they were gouging him, or he was gouging them.
Yeah, he was charging them 6% off the top. Plus, he had them in funds, invested in funds that were charging them 2% when he could have had them in funds that were charging them like 0.1%. Plus, on top of that, you have to include about 2% for inflation and taxes, kind of on a yearly basis. Right. So the way I explained it to them was just to make 1% on their money, they had to do 11% per year, because they were getting charged 10% in total fees, which is why they were losing money every year as the stock market was going straight up.
Wow. So he was...
No. Well, and I can go into more detail on that because we found out some issues later that he wasn't actually an advisor like they thought. They thought he was like an actual stock advisor. He was a salesman.
Why am I not surprised? Yeah, but it's hard to know that. I mean, most people don't know that. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know the difference, you know?
Well, and most people, and that's because we don't have basic financial literacy in this country. And even the consumerism class I took was very basic, like just talked about pretty much how you need to invest. Here's how to write a check. It didn't go into any details whatsoever. So just with that knowledge, if I would have just had that knowledge, I wouldn't have been able to tell either. So my parents, my dad was in the Air Force for 21, 22 years. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She worked as a receptionist. She kind of worked at odd jobs on the Air Force base and stuff like that as we were growing up. So we didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
So we didn't talk about investments. We didn't talk about stocks. So they didn't understand what he was saying to them, because he's one of those typical financial people that I was talking about earlier that talks in these huge, complicated terms, and this is how great things are going to be. There's no risk. Don't worry about anything. Here's a tip. If anybody, especially in the investment realm, tells you there's no risk, or they guarantee you XYZ, like you're going to make XYZ amount of money, you need to run away from them. Because there's always risk.
A lot of people say that.
There's always risk in every investment. Doesn't matter how safe and secure it is, there's always risk in every investment. But that gets back to your earlier question of why I want to help people, is because I want to help people learn this basic financial literacy, even if it's not necessarily investment specific stuff like I teach. Just basic financial literacy, so you can keep yourself from getting ripped off. Because I'm an internal optimist and I like to see the best in people, but in the finance space especially, there's a lot of people who will rip you off, and they won't even feel bad about it because they're making lots of money.
Makes sense.